Congratulations, you're 1 month pregnant. Everything looks fine. Mia Bowen held the results of her pregnancy test as she returned to her marital home, feeling like she was dreaming. Was she actually pregnant? She mustered the courage to text her husband, Timothy Barrett. "Will you be coming home for dinner tonight?" It felt like forever as she waited for a reply. He'd never liked it when people disturbed him at work, and she was worried that her message would go unanswered as it had in the past. And the next second, her phone lit up. Timothy replied curtly, "Yeah, I have something to tell you." After getting an answer, Mia hurried to get the groceries for that night's dinner. She put the results of the pregnancy test on the table, then flipped it over, feeling that she was being too obvious. And in the evening, a black limousine drove into the courtyard. Timothy got out with his suit jacket casually flung over one arm. He had a tall figure and striking features. "Timothy, you're back." Mia jogged over to him, reaching out to take his suit jacket. But Timothy handed her some papers instead. A trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Take a look at this. You can bring up any requests you might have," he said. Mia looked down at the papers. The first page had the words "divorce agreement" written on it. The bright whiteness of the paper seemed to stab her eyes. Timothy tugged his tie loose, traces of fatigue showing on his face. He looked down at Mia, taking in the baby fat around her face. She looked like a minor. He didn't have any feelings for her. He'd only married her because his grandmother liked her. Her presence had also improved his grandmother's health, so this marriage was mutually beneficial. If not for the accident a month back, he wouldn't even have noticed that they'd been married for 3 years. Keeping this facade up would only be a waste of Mia's time and youth. It was better for them to separate. Mia gently placed a hand over her belly and asked shakily, "If, and this is only hypothetical, I were to tell you that I'm pregnant, would you still go ahead with the divorce?" Timothy's gaze landed on her belly. He frowned. "Didn't I tell you to take the morning after pill after that time? What happened a month ago was an accident. The one and only accident that had happened over the 3 years of their marriage." Mia acted like her hand had been burned. She quickly moved it away, but Timothy grabbed her by the wrist with a complicated gaze. "Are you really pregnant?"
Mia e bridingicht.
"I asked you a question. If I were pregnant, would you want to keep the baby?"
No.
Timothy sighed. There was no point in having a baby when its parents were caught in a loveless marriage. It was what had happened with his parents. Mia's heart seemed to empty out as he let go of her. She watched as he walked away. Then she tilted her head back to force the tears back. Timothy's words were like knives that stabbed her right in the chest. Mia looked at the food she put her heart into making. They had gone cold. She poured them into the trash. Feeling a bit nauseous from the greasiness, she rubbed her belly. There was a tiny life growing in there. She swallowed her bitterness as she thought, "Your daddy may not want you, but I'll definitely protect you with all I've got." She'd grown up as an orphan. Her adoptive parents had kicked her aside after giving birth to a pair of twins, banishing her to her adoptive aunt's house. Fortunately, her aunt, Patricia Bowen, treated her well. It was Mia's biggest wish to have a family of her own. She knew Timothy didn't love her, but she'd still tried her best to be a good wife to him. Now reality had proven to her that it was impossible for one to make a rock melt. Still, now that she was pregnant, she wouldn't be alone anymore, even after the divorce. Mia didn't bother reading the divorce agreement. She just signed on the last page. That night, she slept in the master bedroom as usual while Timothy slept in the study. Everything was the same as before. They'd been married for 3 years but had also slept separately for those 3 years. The following morning, Mia received a call from her mother-in-law, Sharon Hopkins. Sharon sounded imperious as she said, "Mia, have the maids tidy up one of the guest bedrooms on the 2nd floor. A guest will be staying over for a few days. Remember to welcome her and treat her nicely." Mia didn't even have time to ask who it was when Sharon had already hung up. She smiled faintly, already used to how disdainful Sharon was of her. It was as if saying another word to her would bring shame to the Barrett family. When Mia came downstairs, Timothy had left for work. In the afternoon, a young woman dressed from head to toe in branded clothing walked into the living room. A trace of surprise flashed in Mia's eyes. Was this the guest Sharon had mentioned? A beautiful young woman? A hint of mockery flashed in Mia's eyes. In the past, she would have felt terrible, but now that she and Timothy were divorced, It didn't matter how many women were to stay in the villa. It had nothing to do with her. Mia stepped forward. "Hi." Before she could finish, the beautiful woman ignored her and walked around the living room. Then she said to the butler, Caleb Gould, "Those curtains are hideous and so is the couch. Remember to also change the beds in the bedrooms to the brand I like." Mia watched as this guest criticized every corner of her marital home. She said bluntly, "Who are you? We're not doing any renovations here. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Maya Lane, and I'm the future lady of this household. Naturally, that means I call the shots when it comes to this villa's furnishings." "You're Maya Lane." A trace of bitterness crept into Mia's heart. It was no wonder Timothy had suddenly brought up the divorce. Maya was back. Since his first love was back, Mia, the cheap substitute, had to go. "I guess you've heard of me. Hurry up and sign those divorce papers then. You've held on to this position for the past 3 years. It's time for you to return it to its rightful owner," Maya said. Mia said calmly, "You make it sound like you really love Timothy. If that's the case, why didn't you marry him 3 years ago when he was in a coma from the accident?" Back then, Timothy had gotten into a terrible accident. His grandmother, Laura Graham, wanted to get him a wife so he could leave some offspring behind, but the socialites that usually crowded around him wanted nothing to do with him. At the time, Mia had been Laura's carer, and Laura treated her incredibly well. She'd even lent Mia money to repay her debts. Mia couldn't bear to see Laura devastated by her grandson's death, so she agreed to marry Timothy. Everyone had thought Timothy wouldn't make it through, herself included. She thought the marriage was only for show, but to everyone's surprise, Timothy had suddenly regained consciousness. Since then, her position in the Barrett family had become too awkward for words. After all, everyone would only make fun of the Barrett family, the richest family in Burn City, because of its scion marrying a regular carer. That was why her identity had been kept a secret for the past 3 years. Maya stiffened. "That's because my brothers refused to let me marry Tim, and even locked me up at home. I lost my chance to marry him because of that, and you swooped in. I'm warning you. I'm the heiress to the Lane family from Nord City, and my brothers are all super powerful. It'd do you good to worry about your family if you ever wanted to go against me." Mia's expression turned cold. "I won't let you off the hook if you dare lay a hand on my family. Sign the agreement if you don't want anything to happen to them, then." Maya glanced at the divorce agreement on the coffee table, feeling smug. She'd waited for this day for 3 years, Mia said calmly. "I've already signed it. At least you're not a complete idiot." Maya pulled a check out of her bag. "This is $1 million. Take it as a little gift from me." A trace of mockery flashed in Mia's eyes. She didn't accept the check. "Don't tell me you think it's too little. This would be 10 years worth of your pay as a carer. Take the money and stay away from our lives. Tim and I are a perfect match for each other, unlike you. You're just a country bumpkin. You and us rich people are from different worlds." Maya's words stabbed Mia. She staggered to the master bedroom in a daze. Even if Maya hadn't dropped by today, she would have left anyway. Since she and Timothy were now divorced, there was no point in her staying here. As Mia packed, she realized how few belongings she had. They weren't even enough to fill one suitcase. The past 3 years seemed like a dream to her. She looked at the pregnancy test on the bedside table and told herself it was time to put an end to things. At this moment, Maya strode into the master bedroom like she owned it. She was still holding the divorce agreement. "Are you done packing?" She glanced around, spotting the piece of paper on the bedside table. She seemed to catch the words Children's and Women's Hospital on it. A trace of confusion flashed in her eyes. Mia quickly grabbed the pregnancy test and crumpled it into a ball. Maya asked in surprise, "Wait, are you pregnant?" Mia clenched her fist around the pregnancy test. "If I really were pregnant, I wouldn't have agreed to the divorce. I suppose that's right. After all, a gold digger like you wouldn't let any opportunity to rise the ranks with a pregnancy slip. Still, even if you were pregnant, Tim wouldn't allow you to keep the baby. You're a peasant who doesn't deserve to give the Barrett family an heir anyway," said Maya. Mia turned to head into the walk-in closet, but Maya followed her. "Hold on. Show me that paper you took from the bedside table." After some thought, Maya felt she couldn't rest easy until she knew what the paper said. What if Mia really were pregnant? She had to get rid of the baby. Mia held the pregnancy test tighter. This is my private business. Humph. Private business? I bet you're just trying to steal something expensive. Hand it over. Maya stepped forward to pry Mia's fist open, even raising a hand to hit her. Mia instinctively threw Maya over her shoulder. The latter landed on her back and wailed, "My leg hurts." "What the hell are you doing, Mia?" At this moment, Timothy's cold voice rang out. Mia turned to see him walk into the room, and her heart jolted. She mumbled, "Timothy, it's not like what you think." The only response she received was him walking past her to sweep Maya into his arms. He happened to see the divorce agreement with Mia's name signed on the last page. Timothy stared at it for a while longer. Had Mia signed the paper so quickly? Timothy returned to his senses and asked Maya lowly, "Are you okay?" "My hand hurts, Tim." "Is it broken? Can I continue playing the piano in the future?" Maya wept. Timothy placed her on the bed. "I'm sure you're fine. I'll have a doctor check on you." Then he turned to look at Mia. Apologized to Maya. Maya was the heiress to the Lane family and had 3 older brothers who absolutely doted on her. If the Lane family were to find out about Mia laying a hand on her, they wouldn't let Mia off the hook. Mia's heart ached at how Timothy said Maya's name. Their names were so similar, but Timothy had never pronounced hers correctly. Even during the one night they'd slept together, he'd called Maya's name. She thought he'd been calling her like how he usually mispronounced it, but she now realized he'd just been calling Maya's name. She'd thought too highly of herself from beginning to end. She was nothing but Maya's substitute. The ache in Mia's heart intensified until she grew numb. She said hoarsely, "Apologize. You're the one who laid a hand on her first. Even a child would know what to do in this situation. Besides, do you know how important a pianist's hands are?" Timothy snarled. Mia felt like she should have expected this. Even a strand of hair on Maya's head was more important than her. On the other hand, she was worth less than a blade of grass by the roadside that she'd suffered in silence for 3 years, and she didn't want to take it anymore. Mia said stubbornly, "I don't care whether you believe me, but she's the one who made the first move." Caleb, who stood at the master bedroom's doorway, chimed in, "Mr. Barrett, I saw everything happen. Mrs. Barrett's the one who pushed Ms. Lane." Timothy frowned and growled, "Apologize. What if I refuse?" A trace of surprise flashed in Timothy's eyes. When had Mia, who had always been obedient and accommodating, been so sharp-tongued? He pursed his lips. "You've got a tough streak, huh? Think about your uncle who's still lying in a bed in the hospital's private ward." Mia's uncle, James Stone, had gotten into a fight and had tried to escape when the police wanted to arrest him. Unfortunately, he'd ended up getting into an accident in the process of escaping. He was still comatose in the hospital. This was enough. Hadn't she learned her lesson yet? Mia held back her tears, finding it hard to believe that Timothy had used James to threaten her. She looked at Maya, who lay on her bed, looking like she belonged there. The wedding picture that hung above the bed seemed to mock Mia's existence. Mia finally gave in to the harsh reality. She said hoarsely, "I'm sorry." Maya was secretly delighted but didn't let it show. She pretended to be magnanimous, saying, "I'll forgive you for Tim's sake." Mia straightened up and looked at Timothy. "Can I go now?" She didn't want to spend another second there. She bent down to pick the divorce agreement up and handed it to him. This time, her attitude was as firm as possible. Timothy looked at the divorce agreement and subconsciously frowned. He hadn't expected Mia to sign the papers without a fuss this time. Whenever he tried to do this in the past, she would have Laura help her. He'd already thought of the ways he could persuade Laura to see sense, but it seemed he wouldn't need to do anything. Timothy couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. He looked at Mia's suitcase. Was she leaving already? He looked at her. "Have you already found a place to stay?"
No, Mia answered reflexively.
She looked at him in surprise. Was he concerned about her? Timothy quickly averted his gaze. "Go downstairs to get some ice for Maya's foot. She sprained it because of you, so you can't leave without doing anything." So this was still about Maya. For a split second, Mia had thought Timothy was worried about her. It seemed their 3-year marriage was nothing compared to his first love. Mia left the bedroom, walking stiffly. Her husband's mistress had barged into their marital home and taken control of what was supposed to be their bed. Yet she still had to bring said mistress ice for her foot. Mia thought self-deprecatingly, "Could you be any cheaper, Mia Bowen?" As she walked down the stairs, she accidentally missed a step. She instinctively grabbed the plant closest to her, but it fell over and rolled down the stairs. At this critical moment, someone grabbed her. Mia turned to stare at Timothy. He'd saved her. He pulled her to him forcefully, making her head smack against his chest. Her cheek was pressed to his chest. She could hear his beating heart. Panicked, Mia wanted to back away to put some distance between them. Instead of that, Timothy lifted her into his arms and carried her down the stairs. Her face was still pressed to his chest, and she was enveloped by his scent. Her face was burning when he set her on her feet. They'd been married for 3 years but had never had any physical contact aside from the accident a month ago. Timothy said coldly, "Keep your eyes open when you're walking. You don't want to fall on your head and end up like an idiot, do you?" Mia pursed her lips as she gradually calmed down. She looked at the vase which had shattered on the floor, leaving the soil scattered. "I'll go clean that up. Have the maids do it. Don't you have anything better to do?" Timothy frowned. He hadn't hired a house full of maids for nothing. Only then did Mia remember why she'd come downstairs in the first place. She had to get ice for Maya's foot. A hint of self-deprecation flashed in her eyes. She raised her head a little to see some soil smeared on Timothy's shirt. It had probably gotten on him when he'd saved her from falling earlier. He was a clean freak. There was no way he could stand something like this. Mia wanted to tell him about it, but he'd already turned to head back upstairs. It looked like he was heading to the master bedroom. Was he that worried about Maya? He couldn't even be bothered to clean up the soil on his shirt. Mia let out a ragged breath and headed upstairs with the ice. When she entered the master bedroom, she saw that Timothy wasn't around. Where had he gone? Maya leaned against the bed frame and smirked at her. "You can put the ice down and go, unless you want to stay here to serve me. Or could it be that you want to see me and Tim being lovey-dovey? It has been 3 years since we last saw each other, after all." Maya's words were pointed. Her underlying meaning was clear. Only then did Mia hear the sound of running water in the bathroom. Timothy was showering in there. The blood drained from her face. She and Timothy had just signed the divorce papers, yet Timothy was already raring to fuck his first love. Mia's stomach roiled at the thought of what would happen on that bed in a while. Still, she controlled herself and turned to head into the walk-in closet to pack her things. It didn't take long to put everything into her suitcase. "Caleb, that suitcase seems to be branded. Get her a recyclable bag for her to put her stuff," Maya said. Soon, Caleb brought over a dirty recyclable bag. He flung it at Mia's feet and said, "Use this." Mia bent down to open up her suitcase. Behind her, Maya said, "Remember to check her things later. We don't want her to take anything that doesn't belong to her." At her words, Mia recalled what Timothy had said about getting rid of the baby. He was only in the bathroom. If he were to find out about the pregnancy test, there was no way she could keep the baby. Caleb and Maya were standing guard outside the walk-in closet. Mia looked at the pregnancy test that she'd buried with her stuff, then came to a decision. She turned around and secretly ripped the pregnancy test to shreds, stuffing them into her mouth and swallowing them. As she stared at Timothy's clothes in the closet, her heart slowly died. From today onward, her child would have nothing to do with the Barrett family. Mia turned to leave the closet with her recyclable bag. "Do you want to check this?" Maya covered her mouth, looking disgusted. "God, get out of here before checking those things. That bag stinks." Once Timothy was out of the shower, she wouldn't be able to drive Mia away. She couldn't allow Mia to linger. Caleb stepped forward to shove Mia. "Are you deaf? Get out of here." Mia walked out of the villa alone. It was a short distance, but it felt like it took her a century to get there. Caleb snatched the recyclable bag from her and poured its contents out on the ground, as if wanting to search for something. It was too bad Mia had already swallowed the pregnancy test. Mia crouched on the ground, wanting to pick her things up. At that moment, her phone rang. When she answered it and heard Patricia's voice, the tears started rolling down her face. That she'd made it through being humiliated by Maya and misunderstood by Timothy without shedding a tear. but she could no longer hold herself back upon hearing Patricia's voice. She was choked up as she said, "Aunt Patricia." "Mia, why are you crying?" "I'm getting a divorce, Aunt Patricia. I'm losing my family again." "Oh, you silly thing. Whoever said anything about you not having a family? That's what I'm calling you about. Your family tracked me down. You have 3 older brothers who are from the Lane family in Nord City. You also have 3 older male cousins, which means you have 6 older men to watch over you. They're here for you, and they're your family," Patricia said. Mia faltered. "My family?" She'd long since known she was an orphan, but she'd never thought about searching for her biological family. Since her parents hadn't wanted her, she didn't need to seek them out. "Don't cry, Mia, and hurry home. We don't need those rich people. Or maybe I can have your brother." Before Mia could say anything, the line cut off because her phone had run out of battery. Her heart was in a mess though. Had her family really found her? "What are you up to now, Mia?" At this moment, Timothy stepped out of the villa in a loose bathrobe. He'd been kind enough to let her stay for a few more days, so she could process everything. Yet she'd already packed her things to leave while he'd been in the shower. Timothy saw the things that were strewn over the ground. They were all regular clothing. Mia hadn't taken a single branded item with her that hadn't she married him, because she wanted those things? He couldn't believe she hadn't taken any of it. Timothy's gaze landed on the dirty recyclable bag, and he frowned. "Are you playing hard to get again? Whose pity are you trying to win again? It's not like Grandma's here." He hadn't let her down in any way throughout their 3-year marriage. Aside from not having feelings for her, he'd never been stingy with her. Even with the divorce, he was going to compensate her a huge sum. It was more than enough for her to live a comfortable life. Did she really want to leave, or was she just putting on an act? Mia held her phone tightly, still processing the news of her family having found her. In the past, she'd dreamed of her family finding her one day so she wouldn't be alone anymore. She was distracted by these thoughts, but in Timothy's eyes, this was a silent admission. Maya pretended to limp as she approached them. "Tim." She packed her things to leave, but went to the kitchen to get that dirty recyclable bag to put her stuff in. "She refused to listen to me no matter what I said." Caleb chimed in. "I wanted to tell Mrs. Barrett not to use that bag, sir, but she refused to listen. She even threw the clothes all over the ground. Honestly, she has a branded suitcase, yet she's using that recyclable bag to garner pity. If people were to hear about this, they'd think the Barrett family was mistreating her." A poignant silence filled the air. Mia stood there motionlessly as she listened to Maya and Caleb frame her. She fixed her gaze on Timothy, wanting to know what he would say. He gave her a sharp look and asked coldly, "Don't you have anything to say?" It was as she'd expected. A trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. "They've already said everything there is to say. I've got nothing." Timothy wouldn't believe her regardless of what she said anyway. There was no point in wasting her breath. "Haven't you learned to be content with what you've got, Mia? What else do you want?" In Timothy's eyes, Mia was nothing but a woman who'd married him for his money. Mia gave up. She said bluntly, "All I want is to be a trophy wife that spends all your money. Look at those other trophy wives. They either go shopping or have high tea and spa days. After marrying you, the kitchen is where I've spent most of my time, and the furthest I've gone is the market. I've spent 3 years as your wife, yet getting kicked to the curb is all I've gotten. You've wasted 3 years of my life. Now that I've signed the divorce papers, I don't want to be your slave anymore. What's so wrong about that?" Mia felt like a weight had been lifted off her chest now that she'd vented her frustrations in one go. As expected, life was much better when one chose to be rude. "Are you done?" Timothy asked. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes. He'd given her a credit card that was specifically meant to pay for their household costs, and she had $1 million as her monthly allowance. Every season, he would also have Caleb bring Mia the latest clothing items from all the biggest fashion brands. He'd even paid for her uncle's hospital bills. Now that they were divorced, he'd compensated her a huge sum, which was enough for her to live out the rest of her life without having to worry about money. Timothy felt like he didn't owe her anything, but why did she still think it wasn't enough? "Nope. I have plenty more to say." "Go on then." "I can, but you'll need to pay me." Timothy pursed his lips. "Are you that much of a gold digger, Mia?" Being too greedy isn't gonna get you anywhere. It seemed that everything boiled down to her thinking she'd gotten the short end of the stick and hadn't been compensated enough. Timothy was rather disappointed as he met Mia's stubborn gaze. Her eyes were clear and bright. He honestly couldn't understand why such a greedy, materialistic liar had such clear eyes. Timothy had never thought about marrying Mia, but since he'd already had, he could have put her upbringing and poor background behind him, as long as she knew her place. He had more than enough money to support her anyway, yet she'd caused trouble time and time again. Now she couldn't even be bothered to put up an act anymore. She'd revealed her true colors. Timothy should have felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but when he saw the divorce agreement that she'd signed, he couldn't help feeling powerless. There was deep sorrow hidden in Mia's eyes. She pretended she didn't care because she didn't want Timothy to trample on her dignity even as she was leaving. When Maya saw that things were getting out of hand, she quickly said, "Mia, were you so quick to sign the divorce agreement because you already found someone new?" Timothy's expression turned cold. He watched Mia like a hawk, his gaze appraising. Mia took in the mistrust on his face and said, "Yeah, of course. As long as my new man is good enough, why would I be hung up on an ex?" Anger filled Timothy's gaze. "Have you been cheating on me while taking my money?" Mia glanced at the clothes strewn on the ground. "I'll return those to you then." She'd only taken some ordinary things that didn't stand out so much. She hadn't even touched the branded bags and accessories. Timothy didn't even spare them a glance. His gaze was fixed on her as he said, "I also bought those clothes that you're currently wearing. I'll return them to you too." Timothy stared at her with a cold gaze. Meanwhile, Maya's eyes lit up. She sneakily took out her phone, wanting to record such an exciting scene. Mia stood there and decided to risk everything. She slowly undid the buttons on her shirt, revealing her delicate collarbones. Her cleavage was also vaguely in view, that Timothy's pupils constricted. He hadn't expected her to really try to take her shirt off. His expression was steely as he snarled, "That's enough. You're the most shameless woman I've ever met, Mia Bowen. Get the fuck out of here. I don't want to see you ever again." With that, he turned and stormed back into the villa. Even from behind, he was as icy as always. Mia stopped. A trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. Hadn't he been the one to tell her to strip? Her palms were clammy with sweat. She'd really been ready to risk everything. Maya lowered her phone, feeling rather disappointed. Then she said haughtily, "You might be cheap enough to strip, but think about whether there are any rich men who are willing to watch. Otherwise, you'd be stripping for nothing. It's all your fault for having such a shitty upbringing. Just live out the rest of your life as a regular peasant, and stop dreaming about rising through the ranks by marrying upward." Mia clutched the recyclable bag and sniffled. Sometimes she genuinely envied people who'd been born into good families. Whenever she was bullied, she would imagine her family descending from the heavens and getting revenge for her. But she knew things like that only existed in TV shows. Even if her family had found her now, there was no way something like that could happen. At this moment, they heard a buzzing sound as a helicopter landed on the grass not too far from them. Several tall, burly bodyguards got out and marched toward Mia, looking menacing. When Timothy heard the noise from inside the villa, he stood at the door to see what was happening. He watched as the bodyguards stood before Mia. They said respectfully, "Ms. Bowen, we're here to pick you up."